6 leg exercises that build twice the strength of squats after 50. There's a number that changes everything, 38. That is the percentage of leg muscle strength reduction that people experience between the ages of 50 and 70, according to a study published in the European Journal of Applied Physiology. The sad part is that most people do not realize this until climbing a flight of stairs becomes a real effort. The conventional squat, which you have probably done or are still doing, primarily recruits the quadriceps and almost completely ignores the hamstrings, adductors, and deep glutes. Those are exactly the muscles that protect your knees, stabilize your pelvis, and keep you safely on your feet for the next 30 years. Without them, your body finds shortcuts, and those shortcuts are called lower back pain, unstable knees, and compromised balance. That is why today you will see the 6 exercises that correct this mistake and build twice the functional strength after 50. Before we begin, please tell us in the comments your name and the city where you are watching our content. We would love to know. Exercise number 1, step up with knee raise. The step up with knee raise is one of the most complete unilateral exercises for people aged 50 and older. And the reason is straightforward. It accurately reproduces the movement patterns you use every day, such as climbing stairs, getting up from a chair, or walking on uneven terrain. When an exercise mimics what your body already does in real life, the strength gains translate directly into independence and quality of life. That is functional strength, not gym strength that stays locked in the locker room. The muscles this exercise works most intensely are the glute max, hamstrings, and quadriceps, while also demanding constant stabilization from the glute med and core throughout the entire movement. Research using electromyography published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research demonstrated that unilateral lower limb exercises produce significantly greater activation of the glute max and hamstrings compared to bilateral movements like the conventional squat. This is especially relevant after 50 because that is when muscular imbalances between the two sides of the body start manifesting as pains that seem unexplainable but have a very clear origin. To execute correctly, place your entire foot on the step or bench, including the heel. The ascent should be performed by pushing through the sole of the foot with emphasis on the heel, and at the top of the movement, the opposite knee is lifted toward the chest and held for 1 second. You will know you are doing it right when you feel the glute of the supporting leg contract at the exact moment the opposite knee rises. The descent should be controlled over 3 seconds. That is the eccentric phase where most of the strength is built, and it is exactly the phase most people waste by dropping back down to the step without any control. The main errors to avoid are placing the lower foot on the ground to assist the ascent, which removes the load from the glutes and hamstrings and transfers it to the quadriceps and calves, and rising with the torso excessively leaned forward, which also takes the focus off the glutes and overloads the front knee. Both errors seem harmless, but together they sabotage exactly the muscles that need the most stimulus. 3 sets of 8 repetitions per leg are recommended in the first week using only body weight, progressing with light dumbbells in the following weeks. Regarding contraindications, people with acute knee injuries, recent hip or knee replacements, or severe balance disorders should avoid the exercise or adapt it under professional supervision. Exercise number 2, glute bridge march. The glute bridge march is the natural evolution of the traditional glute bridge, but with a difference that completely changes what the exercise delivers. By adding the marching component where one knee is lifted while the hip remains elevated and stable, the exercise becomes a powerful tool for diagnosing and correcting muscular asymmetries. The exercise primarily works the glute max, hamstrings, and deep core, with special emphasis on the transverse abdominis and the spinal stabilizers. This coordination between the hip and core is something that machine exercises simply cannot create, because the guided track directs the movement and eliminates exactly the stabilization component that makes all the difference. The execution begins lying on your back with knees bent and feet parallel at hip width. Lift the hips into the bridge position, contracting the glutes with maximum force. From there, without letting the hip drop or rotate, lift one knee toward the chest and hold for 2 seconds before returning and switching sides. The key point is that the hip must remain absolutely still during the marching phase. If it drops to one side the moment the knee rises, you have just identified exactly the imbalance this exercise was created to correct. The main error is allowing that lateral sinking of the hip and treating it as something normal, rather than recognizing it as as a sign of glute med weakness that needs to be addressed. Another common error is not contracting the glutes with sufficient intensity before initiating the march, turning the exercise into a passive movement without the necessary muscular recruitment. 3 sets of 6 repetitions per side are recommended in the first week, progressing to 8 repetitions with a 3-second pause in the second week, and adding a resistance band above the knees in the third week to increase glute med recruitment. Since this is a low-impact exercise, there are no significant contraindications, but people with acute lower back pain should start cautiously and stop if they feel discomfort in the spine during execution. Exercise number 3, Bulgarian split squat. If there is one exercise that brings together everything a person over 50 needs in a single movement, it is the Bulgarian split squat. It combines intense work for the glute max, quadriceps, and hamstrings through a full range of motion without overloading the spine the way a conventional barbell squat does. Beyond the primary muscle groups, the exercise demands intense stabilization from the glute med, ankle, and core, developing balance and proprioception that protect the joints long term. In practice, it is a hip hinge performed on a single leg, with the additional requirement of keeping the entire body aligned. Challenging? Absolutely. But that is exactly the challenge that produces adaptations a bilateral squat simply cannot deliver. To execute with precision, there is a tip that simplifies the positioning. Sit on the edge of the bench, extend the front leg, and mark where the heel touches the floor. That is the exact point where the foot should be positioned. The rear foot rests on the bench with the top of the foot. The torso leans slightly forward like a hip hinge, and the descent is performed until the front thigh is parallel to the floor. The ascent is driven through the entire sole of the foot with emphasis on the heel. It is not a straight down descent. It is a diagonal movement that keeps the front knee aligned with the foot and the glutes as the primary movers. The main errors to avoid are treating the movement like a vertical squat, which overloads the front knee and removes the glutes from the equation, positioning the front foot too close to the bench, forcing the knee to travel excessively past the toes, and allowing the front knee to cave inward during the ascent, a clear sign of glute med weakness that must be corrected before adding any load. 3 sets of 6 repetitions per leg are recommended in the first week using only body weight, progressing with light dumbbells in the following weeks. The main contraindication is acute knee pain or severe ankle instability. People with knee or hip replacements should consult a professional before performing this exercise. Before we continue, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Having constant access to science-based information is what will help you progress with health over the long term in the world of exercise. Exercise number 4, Copenhagen plank. The Copenhagen plank is an isometric side exercise that most people have never heard of, yet it is capable of reactivating 2 muscle groups that conventional routines systematically ignore: the glute med and the hip adductors. The glute med is the primary stabilizer of the pelvis during walking. When it weakens, the hip drops with every step, the knee rotates inward, and the lower back absorbs impacts it was never designed to handle. After 50, this muscle tends to enter progressive inhibition, simply because it is not demanded in daily activities or in most common exercises. Have you ever considered that lateral hip weakness could be the source of lower back pain you have been treating for years without results? What makes this exercise particularly valuable is its ability to force the glute med and adductors to work simultaneously under sustained isometric load, recreating a neuromuscular connection that most traditional exercises cannot access. It seems simple until you try to hold the position for 20 seconds. Then the deep burn on the side of the hip and the inner thigh makes it very clear that the right muscles are being recruited. The execution is performed lying on your side with the top foot resting on a sturdy bench or chair. Lift the hip off the ground, using that top leg as a lever, maintaining a straight line from head to toe without hip rotation and with the core contracted throughout. The supporting elbow is positioned directly below the shoulder. The position feels stable at first, but as the glute med begins to fatigue, the real challenge appears and the quality of the position is tested. For beginners, bending the top knee to 90 degrees reduces the lever and makes the execution easier without losing the muscular benefit. It is an intense intelligent progression that allows you to build the necessary strength before advancing to the straight leg position. The main error to avoid is letting the hip rotate or sink, losing alignment, and transferring the load to structures that should not be working there. 3 sets of 10 seconds per side are recommended in the first week, progressing to 20 seconds in the second and 30 seconds in the third. People with knee, hip, or iliotibial band injuries should start cautiously with professional guidance. Exercise number 5, pillow squeeze. The pillow squeeze may seem too simple to belong on a list of serious exercises, but do not be fooled by appearances. This isometric exercise directly targets the hip adductors, the muscle group responsible for bringing the thighs together, stabilizing the hip, and supporting the knee joint. These muscles tend to progressively weaken with age due to lack of specific stimulation, and the consequences appear in ways we rarely associate with them: knee instability, groin pain, and difficulty maintaining balance on uneven surfaces. Research related to the Copenhagen adductor program has demonstrated that strengthening the adductors significantly reduces the risk of hip and knee injuries in older adults, while also contributing to improved pelvic stability. What makes this exercise even more interesting is that it also activates the pelvic floor and deep core stabilizers. For men over 50 who experience mild pelvic dysfunction or stress urinary incontinence, this is an additional benefit that goes far beyond conventional strength training. The execution is simple. Lie on your back with knees bent and feet flat on the floor. Place a firm pillow or small rubber ball between the knees and squeeze with maximum force, sustaining the contraction for 5 to 10 seconds before fully relaxing. Breathing should remain controlled. During the squeeze, without holding your breath, the main errors to avoid are using a pillow that is too soft, which does not provide enough resistance to effectively stimulate the adductors, and not performing a complete relaxation between repetitions, which prevents muscle recovery and reduces the quality of the next squeeze. The firmer the object, the greater the muscular recruitment, and this detail makes all the difference in the result. 3 sets of 10 repetitions with a 5-second squeeze are recommended in the first week, progressing to 10 seconds of sustained hold in the following weeks. The exercise has very low impact and virtually no contraindications, being safe even for those with moderate joint pain. It should be avoided only in cases of acute groin or adductor injury. Exercise number 6, tibialis wall raise. The tibialis wall raise is probably the least known exercise on this list, and at the same time one of the most important for anyone over 50 who wants to preserve the quality and safety of their gait. The tibialis anterior, that muscle running along the shin, is responsible for dorsiflexion of the foot. It controls how the foot lands with every step. When it is weak, the toes tend to drag along the ground, the ankles become unstable, and the knees begin absorbing impacts they were not designed for, accelerating joint wear in a progressive and silent way. It is the kind of problem that starts small and keeps growing until walking stops being something enjoyable and becomes a daily source of discomfort. The tibialis anterior and the calf function as a direct antagonist pair. If one is strong and the other is weak, the entire mechanics of the lower leg deteriorate. Regular practitioners of this exercise report noticeable improvement in walking quality within just a few weeks, precisely because they are correcting an imbalance that has never received direct attention. To execute, stand with your back against a wall and your heels, positioned about 6 inches from the base. With legs extended, pull the toes toward the shins as far as possible, hold for 1 second at the top, and lower slowly. The burning sensation along the shin after 15 repetitions is the signal that the right muscle is being activated. If you do not feel that, check whether you are using full range of motion and whether your back is truly against the wall throughout the entire execution. The main errors to avoid are performing the movement quickly and without full range of motion, losing effective muscular stimulus, and not keeping the back against the wall, which changes the working angle and reduces tibialis anterior recruitment. 3 sets of 15 repetitions are recommended in the first week, adding a 2-second pause at the top in the second week, and progressing with a resistance band or lightweight over the foot in the third week. There are no significant contraindications, but people with anterior compartment syndrome or a history of tibial stress fractures should avoid the exercise and seek medical evaluation. Bonus exercise, single leg calf raise. The single leg calf raise is an exercise frequently treated as secondary, almost decorative at the end of a workout, but those who think that are ignoring one of the most most strategic structures in the human body. The calves function as the second heart of the body. Each muscle contraction pumps venous blood back from the lower extremities toward the heart, working against gravity in a task that never stops while you are standing. The exercise primarily works the gastrocnemius and the soleus, the two muscles that make up the calf, with the unilateral component ensuring that the stronger side does not compensate for the weaker one. Additionally, unilateral work strengthens the ankle stabilizers far more effectively than the bilateral version, directly reducing the risk of sprains and falls. After 50, a fall can have very serious consequences, and ankle stability is one of the most underestimated variables in that safety equation. One important point: the calf is composed predominantly of slow twitch fibers, which means it responds better to longer sets and greater time under tension. That is why the slow execution is not optional here. It is what makes the exercise truly work. The correct execution is performed standing, with one hand lightly resting on a stable surface for balance only and one foot slightly lifted. Rise slowly over 2 seconds to full extension, hold for 1 second at the top, and lower over 3 seconds, feeling the complete stretch in the lower calf. No bouncing at any point. The main errors to avoid are performing the exercise with both feet at the same time, which allows the stronger side to compensate for the weaker one, and executing with minimal range of motion with almost no real displacement. That second error is so common, it seems epidemic. The movement exists, the rep count exists, but the muscle is not actually being worked. The full range of motion from complete stretch at the bottom to peak contraction at the top is what determines the result. 3 sets of 8 slow repetitions per side are recommended in the first week, progressing to 10 repetitions with a 2-second pause at the stretch in the second week, and performing on the edge of a step for greater range of motion in the third week. People with acute Achilles tendonitis, partial tendon tears, or severe plantar fasciitis should avoid the exercise or perform it only on a flat surface with reduced range of motion until fully recovered. If you enjoyed this and want to discover the best stretches to undo years of neglect on your own body, we have a video appearing right now on your screen showing each one in detail. Do not miss it. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and God bless you, my friend.